Welcome to the Rational Egoist. I'm your host, Michael Liebowitz, and we have a wonderful guest here today. She is a longtime objectivist. She's also a cardiologist, and she's a best-selling author. Cristina LePort, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
So there's so much to talk about. I don't really know where to start. I guess I'll just start with objectivism. So when did you first get in contact with objectivism, and what was its appeal to you?
It was my husband who introduced me to objectivism by giving me a little shrug. That was when I was in my early 30s, when I first met him. We weren't married yet, but I was stunned by that book. I was going through a divorce at the time, and I read that book in 2 weeks, and I realized, actually, I wasn't yet going through a divorce. I read that book in 2 weeks, and I realized I had to really get divorced, basically, because, you feel, I just felt like I had, life couldn't go on that way, and life was too precious. And I was just taken completely by that book, although I had some difficulty with the religious thing, that because I grew up Catholic, and although I wasn't really religious, I kind of had abandoned the idea that you really can follow Catholic religion without dying. But I still had the idea of God and all that, so I struggled with that a little bit. But I just basically couldn't read anything else for a while. I thought it was just so intense and so important, and so obviously difficult to really get. And but I knew it. That was a philosophy for life. To be happy on this earth. So because
Now,
all the philosophies, you just start reading. I studied philosophy in school, but you always get to a point where it doesn't make any sense. But it never happens in objectivism. It's all integrated.
yes, yes, it is. Now, were you already a cardiologist when you first read Atlas Shrugged?
No, when I first read Atlas Shrugged, I was doing internal medicine, and I became a cardiologist. I had almost like a midlife crisis in my late 40s. I wanted to do something different, and cardiology was the specialty I liked the most. And it was also a slight political reason. There were all the managed care coming on, and I was becoming like a gatekeeper and all that. So I wanted to do something different, and I was trying to get into cardiology, which was very difficult to get a fellowship, when you're almost, in your late 40s. And so then eventually I did it. But that's when I started writing, actually, because while I was waiting to get into cardiology, I came across the book by Ayn Rand, The Art of Fiction. And so that's what got me into writing. That booklet is like a jewel. I mean, if you know everything in that little book, you can write novels very well.
That's the one book of hers I have not read. I've read The Art of Nonfiction, but I never read The Art of Fiction.
It's interesting, even if you're not interested in writing fiction, because it helps you understand, appreciate fiction when you read it, I think.
So as a doctor, what I'm very interested in when it comes to objectivism, because I firmly believe that objectivism is like a self-help philosophy, almost a self-improvement philosophy. Yep. And I'm just curious about how or what effect the principles of objectivism have had on your medical career. Did you, for instance, use those, or how did you use the principles of objectivism to approach your career as a doctor before, and then as a cardiologist in particular?
Once you accept there were a lot of things in the philosophy which I already almost instinctively believed they were true, like the principle of selfishness, for example. Although I was raised Catholic, that really gave me the idea that it's impossible to really live that way. And so implicitly, I was accepting selfishness, but I was feeling guilty about it because, you're not supposed to be selfish. The way you grew up in Italy, you're involved in. So so little by little, obviously, with all the incredible experience with Dr. Lana Peikoff, we were there when he wrote OPAR, so we really discussed every chapter, we understood it. So once you accept that, it's not like you come across something and then you say, oh, let me see what I should do. It's like the Bible. I mean, it's just like something that is in your background, and kind of, if you really understand it and you really accept it, it infuses your whole life. So it's there, that you just, when you have to make decisions, you have to be honest, you have to have integrity, and it's not something that you have to go check the book about it. You just kind of know if you really get it. And obviously at the beginning, you have to really go through a period of time where you accept it as your own. It's not immediate, right? I mean, it's not like you read Adolf Shog and you're an objectivist.
No, not at all.
That easy. But obviously it takes years to really get it, and you're still obviously always learning, because I'm not a professional philosopher. So when I go to conference, I learn a lot from the professional philosophers. But it's something, that is just there, and you accept that that's the way you have to, in order to be happy, you have to obviously take care of yourself and make your own decisions. Don't sink into something that you don't want to be in, like a bad marriage or all that. So that, for example, definitely helped me make a decision, because immediately swung me towards to getting divorced, despite the fact that I already had a kid and all this other thing, despite the fact that in my family in Italy nobody has ever gotten divorced, although maybe they should have, some of them. But so it was at the beginning, it was something that helped me thinking about it. And then later on in my profession, again, probably the decision I made to go into cardiology, I'm sure that I could track it back to having something to do with the objectivism. I wasn't happy doing what I was doing. And so I had to do something about it. So that definitely I could track it back. I wasn't consciously saying, okay, objectivists would tell me to do it, but it did.
It was automatized.
It was kind of automatized that being unhappy is not acceptable, because this is it. So
now you mentioned being in Italy, and I have friends that are Italian, and the Italian culture is very family oriented, to the point where it's almost expected that you're going to sacrifice yourself for your family. Okay. And I noticed that my Italian friends, they have this sense of guilt, as if they don't do everything for the family, then they're doing something wrong, and they feel guilty about it. And as somebody who grew up in that culture and liberated yourself from that idea, what is that experience like, intellectually and emotionally, to break free from cultural expectations?
Well, there are different things here, because talking about the family, I think, you don't have to have kids, but you do have kids, you do have an obligation.
Oh, sure. I meant more brothers, sisters, and parents.
Yeah. So obviously it's not, again, according to objectivists, it's not really a sacrifice. If you make a decision that you want kids, there are going to be things you can do right away, like take off and go, a year-long vacation and leave your kids at home. I mean, there are certain things that in advance you're not going to be doing. And if it's a sacrifice, then you shouldn't have kids, if it's a real sacrifice. But the family, yeah, I mean, I actually had before I found objectivism, I had the idea that you have to be selfish. And I mean, again, I didn't have it. If you had asked me, should you be selfish? I mean, I probably should have said, well, let me think about it. But as a feeling, I had it, maybe not as a conscious decision. But I know I wanted to. I mean, I always been, to some extent, selfish in a good way. When I decided to go to medical school, that's what I wanted to do. And, my mother thought I should be a teacher. But again, my parents were very accepted, they were accepted the fact. But I felt awkward even telling them they wanted to go become a doctor at the time, because even when I told them just before signing up for medical school, my mother said, well, you're going to be a pediatrician. It's like, if you are a doctor, you're going to have to be a pediatrician. It's like, yeah, there was that thing. But when I explained that that's what I wanted to do, I didn't let the fact that women, should just get married and have children be my way of being a doctor. So again, Objectivism really gave me the philosophical background and explanation for that was right. Even though maybe instinctively, obviously, I decided when I was 12 I was going to be a doctor, so I knew that's what I wanted to do. But I didn't have any, if somebody has asked me, well, what about your parents? That's why I didn't tell them, until I didn't want to have any major discussion about that. But then when it happened, there wasn't really any major discussion. There was maybe some surprise, but
What
I
was the
parents, yeah.
what was the Opar had such a profound impact on me in my life, just reading it. I mean, I've read it, I don't know, 20, 30 times, but
Well,
what was it like to be there while it was being written? What was that experience like?
I think it was the experience of a lifetime, because I never really could have understood it that way. To have every sentence discussed to make sure it was clearly written. The purpose was to see if different people at different levels, if it was clear enough, or they needed some revision, and so we really discussed, like, maybe like just like I heard Ayn Rand was doing with Atlas Shrug. We would just go be there in the afternoon and be there sometimes, midnight, discussing this stuff. And so it was an incredible thing, because obviously you read Atlas Shrug, and it's interesting that Ayn Rand said, I'd like you to appreciate my novels. That's what I'd like you to do, much more than the philosophy itself. If you like the novels, then you're on the right track. I said, but obviously the novel doesn't give you the full understanding of this integrated philosophy, because even when you read the Gold speech, God forbid, I mean, it's very hard to keep it all in mind. And I haven't even got my head wrapped around the way structure is very strange, because it starts with ethics and then it goes into all kind of stuff. But instead, Opar is all in order. So I thought it was an incredible, work that Leonard Peacock did. Is really a legacy, because he gave you the whole thing, where you can see the full integration starting from the very beginning and then going through all philosophical branches. So without that, it would have been much harder to really keep it together or keep it in my head.
Yeah.
I thought it was an incredible idea to do that, and necessary.
Very. And what a great book.
Yeah.
The medical profession is similar to the teaching profession, where people kind of assume, or at least most people, that it's a selfless thing, that you're in it for other people, that you're there to serve and to help. How do you approach medicine when you were practicing from a selfish perspective?
Yes, you are really there to fight disease. That's the way I looked at it. And of course, there is a great satisfaction that you actually see people getting better. So that's a very selfish reward, to see people that are sick and now they're better. They turn around and then they're grateful. I mean, that also is a very, in a way, selfish reward. So I don't really see it. I mean, that's what I like to do. So I know that in general they say, oh, it's, you sacrifice yourself, this and that. But when you accept to, when you choose to be a doctor, maybe now today it's different. But when I chose to be a doctor, I knew I was going to end up, call in the middle of the night and on call for weekends and days in a row, and be tired and be, depressed about it sometimes, and people would die on me, and I would feel terrible, and then I would go back and think about what did I do wrong, and all those things in a way, you slowly, I mean, you don't know that when you actually choose it, all of it, but you have some idea that you hear about it, you read about it, you know other doctors. And then, of course, you discover it. Now, if you don't like it, you better turn around. I mean, to give you an example, my daughter, she thought she wanted to be a psychiatrist and stuff like that. I said, you have to go to medical school. And so she actually, I said, why don't you see if you like it? So she actually went through training to be an EMT. And she worked in the emergency room for several weeks as an EMT before she, after college. And she discovered she didn't like patients. She just didn't like to be with sick people. So obviously she changed profession. She went into neurobiology. But, it's something that you have to not enjoy to be with sick people, but you enjoy fight the disease. That is a challenge. That's what you do, because a lot of times you treat people you don't really like. I mean, there may be people who are actually not even good people. They're, sometimes you're a criminal, and you kind of, you find yourself in a position that you have to do this job, and maybe there are people you don't respect, but you are really there to fight. That's the way I approached it, the way I saw it. You're there to fight the disease, and obviously, if that helps some good people, then you like it, you enjoy, you feel, you feel happy about it.
You said that you started to write when you were still a doctor, or when you were transitioning to become a cardiologist. What made you decide that you wanted to write? First of all, just write in general, but write fiction in particular.
Yeah, so I actually never really imagined that I would do that, because when I was in school in Italy, I hated writing. There was this assignment in class that called the theme, and they would give us a title, and you had 2 hours to write something about that, and it was a nightmare for me. I just hated it. I write to like about philosophy, like we had philosophy courses and all that. I like those questions and all that, but in general, I didn't like about writing about something like fiction, like. And then when I came to the United States, I barely spoke English. So I never really imagined that I would write novels. But what I did, I came across with that book, The Art of Fiction. And I realized that being an author, it means that you create your own world, and then you invent characters you want to meet, as I mentioned in that book. And then you can make anything you want happen. And I was really intrigued by all that. I thought it was incredible that you could actually do that, enter your world and all that. And so I set up to try to write a novel. It must be really fun to do that. And so I tried that. And of course, I chose the medical background because that's what I knew as my world. And if you think about it, because I mean, I actually also knew that my genre was going to be thrillers. I just like the thrilling thing, that I read a lot of thrillers. I just like that the danger, that feeling of the thriller feeling, that you're on the edge of your seat and all that. And also, I like to create a mystery, and then people have to solve it, and then they have to figure it out, and then there's a surprise at the end. I liked all that. So I knew my genre was, I never had any doubt. And so I decided I'm going to try to write a medical thriller. And if you think about it, the medical background is great because we deal with life or death. So, there is no stake higher than that. And also, I think the quality of the doctors kind of overlap with some of the quality of an author, because we both have to know how to read people, for example. The doctor reads people to make diagnosis, and the author reads people to create characters. And there is that pressure of time in the doctor, that you have to solve something, otherwise the patient dies. And in a thriller, there's always pressure of time because there's something has to be done, something has to happen, otherwise some big disaster is going to get worse, or is going to happen. So all those things overlap, and also the ability to again integrate a lot of different details into a whole, like to make a diagnosis, and as an author to create the mystery with all the clues. So because of all that, I thought it would be very interesting. But then of course I had no no formal training, so I had to go through a few years with a writing coach to learn the techniques. I mean, I had a good story, but I had no technique. Because when you read a book, you don't really care if it's in the first, third person or whatever. The past, the tense, or whatever tense. You don't care any about the dialogue, the tags. But if you want to publish a book, unless you have that down, you're not going to be able to do anything. So,
other than Ayn Rand, have any other authors influenced you in your writing?
Well, Robin Cook, is the father of medical thrillers. So that's where he started the whole thing with Coma, the book Coma. So obviously I read him, and then I also like, as far as tension and mystery and all that, I like Lee Child, I like Conley. So I like to read with the idea of maybe learning something from all these major authors.
Now, how many books have you written? How many novels?
Well, it took me so long to get an agent and a publisher, and so many rejections, that the only therapy for rejection I found useful was actually writing more, because you get rejected over and over, you never get used to it. But then you go back and say, well, I'm going to write something new today. So that has been rejected yet, this is new. And so I actually wrote 4 novels waiting to get published. So these are 2. And then 2 more are going to come out in 2026, because now my publisher really likes my books. And I have 2 more. One is finished with just the first draft, and the other one is half. So I'm on my 6th novel.
Is Dissection, is that the bestseller?
Dissection is the reach bestseller on Amazon. In the political thrillers and mystery was number 1, and it was number 2 in medical thrillers. Also did well in UK, Canada, and Australia.
And that's like part 1 of Change of Heart, or no?
They're all independent. You can read them independently. The only, actually, Dissection, it was the 3rd novel I wrote, believe it or not, and the first getting published. So there is a prequel to Dissection, which is going to come out in 2026. That's when you find out how Kirk Miner has this strange medical knowledge. But they're all different adventures. So I like Kirk Miner so much from Dissection. I kept him with his strange medical knowledge. And then I also like very much Jack Mulville in Dissection. He started in Dissection. It was a total, self-centered, really. I don't know. I don't want to say bad words here, but and then he has an arc, because at the end he's a hero. But it's like, he doesn't like it. He's constantly curses, and he's also always pissed off at people. He thinks that 9 out of 10, people are a waste of time, and so. But at the end, he actually does what needs to be done to save the world. And then there was a minor character in Change of Heart in Dissection. It was a young woman, was a clerk in a hospital, who helps Mulville basically find what he needs in order to prevent World War III. And I don't want to give up, the book, but and Mulville is really impressed by that. He's never impressed by anybody, but she is really impressed by this young woman. And so at the end, when things go well, he tells her in Dissection, you work for the FBI today. But if you really want to work for the FBI when you finish your college, just let me know, and then we'll see what we can do. And so in Change of Heart, she becomes the protagonist, because I had people writing me, boy, I finished Dissection, I love it, and I just want to hire Bloom because she's so efficient. So I hire for Change of Heart to be the protagonist, Charlotte Bloom, a young FBI recruit, in the last 3 months of the 3 years probation, and with a problem and all that.
So Dissection has the same characters, at least some of them.
Yeah, he has Kirk Miner and Mulville, and as a minor character, Charlotte Bloom. They're in Dissection.
when you wrote change, I read Change of Heart. I haven't yet read Dissection, but Change of Heart's a wonderful, wonderful book. I really enjoyed it. And normally I'm able to figure books out, mysteries. This one, I did not figure it out. I actually figured out the most important thing on the very, like, right on the page before they tell us.
Really? Okay.
You tell us, yeah. But normally I'm able to figure that stuff out. Here I couldn't. But do you know, when you write a book like this, do you know the basic story before you start writing? Like, do you know how it's all going to pan out, or does that come to you as you're writing?
Right. So that's one thing that Ayn Rand really insists on in her art of fiction. And I completely agree with her. I have to know the story. I have to know everything about the story. It doesn't have to be all on paper. It doesn't have to be an outline, long outline, or whatever, like she did. But it has to be in your head completely, including the climax, include the problem, the climax, and all that. Because if you don't know, then that is your standard for choosing the actions and for choosing how the character are going to act or speak, or that's the standard, is the story. So if you don't have the story, you don't have the standard, you're going to end up writing a whole lot of stuff that may be very well written, it may be wonderful, but you're going to have to scrap it because it's nothing to do with the story once you figure out what the story is. So the story has to come first. I mean, I hear a lot of my colleagues, I don't have the slightest idea, I just sit down and write. And then they complain they have, the writer's block. I mean, where are you going? Now, that doesn't mean that nothing's going to change. I mean, if you look at my outlines, I mean, there are the pantser, they go by the seat of the pants, and and the plotters in the author. There are two categories of authors. I don't know if you know, but the pantser go by the seat of the pants, and the plotters plot with it.
I've never heard that before.
So I'm kind of in between. I have to have the story. And so I jot down some sort of an outline that nobody in his right mind can read. I'm the only one who can read. It's not like Ayn Rand that you can publish a book about his life. There are outlines, with everything, all the characters. They're wonderful. No, so my outline, I just write down, so this is going to happen. And if some dialogue occurs to me, I just put it there. I say, this sounds like that should be a good cliffhanger for the end of a chapter. I draw a line. So that's my outline. But then when I sit down and actually write, sometimes I change. To give you a big example, in Change of Heart, I had a different end. And then my editor said, there is a slight problem here because your protagonist is not in the climax. Oops, it's like, so I had the climax going on with people shooting at each other, and Charlotte Bloom was sitting in a hospital bed doing nothing, basically. So I had to change the end. And so then the end, actually, now it turned out to be much better than before.
So tell us, what is Change of Heart, without giving too much away? What is the book about?
Yeah, it starts with a mystery. So in New York City, all of a sudden, the number of heart transplants are going up. And the doctor should be really happy because there's a shortage of heart and all that. And all of a sudden, they got all these organs available. They can transplant. But the problem is that the transplants are going up because the number of suicide is going up. And there's a very weird suicide because they happen right in front of the hospital. How convenient is that? And people shoot themselves in their head, not in their heart. And they avoid the area of the brain that is in charge of the heart beating. So the brain gets destroyed and the heart keeps on beating. And so, of course, that's a mystery. Why is that happening? Why these people kill themselves? And who's behind it? And all this started to happen, by the way, after some New York mobster supposedly hacked into the electronic medical record of several hospitals. So I don't know if there's a connection there. And so that's the mystery that obviously, people they're going to have to read the book to find out why that is all happening. And then with it, there is a subplot of romance. I like to put romance in my book, in all my books, because first of all, it's a little bit of relief from the total tension of the thriller. But again, it can't be too much there still has to be tension, even in the romance, because otherwise people fall asleep. This is a thriller, still a thriller. And of course has to be fully integrated with the story. It can't just be like, so this woman happens to fall in love, but has nothing whatsoever to do with the main thing. So I had Charlotte Bloom. I started having medical problems, with her heart and all that. So she's devastated because if her boss, Jack Mobile, finds out, is like almost like too attached to her, almost like in a fatherly way, and he's gonna pull her off and put her on a desk, and and she's never going to be able to become a real agent. And then it becomes worse because she likes the doctor that she has to interact with. She goes out on a date, and now she has to hide a heart problem from a heart doctor. So there's a little humor there, a little stuff going on. But again, it's all integrated. So, but the main story is that mystery that I described.
Who's your favorite character in the book?
I really like Jack Mobile. It's liberating, to be able to curse, and he's really, also, so he has no, I don't know, he just says everything occurs to him, no inhibitions, even if it's offensive and all. I don't know, I have fun writing his dialogue, and I just kind of like the. But there is more like that in Dissection, because in Change of Heart there was already a hero, but still he has this tendency of always being kind of pissed off, and and there's
he does get pissed, yeah.
Yeah, it's like a good foil for Charlotte Bloom, and I like that also, that interaction. He's never had a kid, and so he sees her almost like but then there is this conflict because she's going to be an agent, so their life is going to be in danger. But I think that is my favorite character. It wasn't my favorite character also in Dissection.
So the people watching this, many are objectivists, some are not objectivists. Why should they read Change of Heart? I can tell them you should read it because it's a great story. It's very entertaining. I read it in a few days because mostly because I had to, but it was I had to get ready for this, but it wasn't how do I put it? It wasn't a strain. Sometimes I have to read a book and it's a strain to read the book. This book was actually enjoyable. I like the characters. I'm going to have to read the Dissection now because I didn't know it had all the same characters. But if you were to recommend it, what would you tell them? Objectivist and non-objectivist. Why should they?
That's the reason. A book is, and a fiction is made to entertain. So they should read it to have fun, as much fun as I had writing it. That's basically the short of it. One thing that I make sure in my books, and I can guarantee that to my readers, my books don't have loose ends at the end. And also they have satisfactory ends. I mean, I sometimes spend time, read books, and, I put all my time into it. And then at the end, God, they could have ended so much better,
Yeah.
And it's so disappointing. I mean, there's like people who are, quote, heroes, they're like just like the feet of clay, and just like there's always this thing, well, you can't be too heroic, it's like, God forbid. So my heroes don't, like I say, my heroes don't wear capes. They're not like, superheroes. They're regular human beings, but they become heroes because they do the right thing, despite the fact that it's very difficult, and despite the fact they're very scared. And so I like to write that kind of hero, and at the end, I like to have the good triumph in my books and the bad pay the price. So, I just like that. I don't like to end the book that you say, wow, this guy looked good at the beginning, but look at that. I mean, it's got A, B, and C. Why did he do that? It's like, you know what I mean? It's like there's confusion. There's all this shade of gray. I kind of like the black and white. Of course, they're not, perfect, but that's the perfect human being is not perfect in the sense of an angel, or a superhero.
No, I'm with you. When people say that to me that about literature or a movie that the characters are not realistic. If I want real life, I'm living it. I don't need to read a book for that, right?
Yeah.
When I read a book, I
Appreciate
want the essentials of what I like put out there for me.
Yeah.
That's what I enjoy.
But that's
Well,
what objectivism says, in order to, you can be a perfect human being. It's not true. Like the Catholic Church, you're always a sinner. There's always something wrong with you. You know what I'm saying? You can
yes,
be a perfect human being within the context of being a
yes,
human being. So within the context of being human beings, I like to write about heroes, and they become heroes by definition. If you want to call it objectivist definition, they don't, they're scared. They sometimes they make mistakes and all that, but they're still heroes if they try really hard to do the right thing, and it's difficult to do, and they're overcoming a lot of, and that's the right thing to do, and they overcome a lot of obstacles. That's what inspires. That's what we want to. That's what I want to read. So I kind of write what I would like to read.
well, thank you for writing that way. It was very enjoyable experience. I'm going to include links to both those books
Thank
with
you.
this episode. Where can people find you elsewhere? Do you have a website? Do you blog? Anything they can do
I
to
have a
find you in your
website.
work?
I have a website. I really appreciate if they check it out and maybe join my newsletter. Is www. Cristina LePort without an H, CRISTINA.com. That's my web. And also I'm on Substack. If you want to join my Substack, then you can get, the mails, when my book or the books come out. I have a book coming out in February. I don't know if I'm allowed, or if I could even try to share or maybe I can send it to you. I don't know. I have a little video about it. I don't know. It's like,
If it's just a link, yeah, send me the link and I'll include it with the episode.
actually, yeah, I can send it. Well, it's actually what do you call it? Trailer.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, send it and I'll
This
have my producer
independent,
include it.
this is an independent book. It's called Defrosted. It's about
Okay.
a little bit more futuristic. It's about a doctor who gets frozen now for political reasons. He dies, but he gets frozen. He got cryogenically preserved, really, which is happening today. But of course, you can't defrost anybody. But he gets defrosted to 100 years from now to solve this biological invasion of some biological entity that's invading the world. And he has a big secret, which is part also, why this biological entity showed up and all that. And also, he's the only one who had defeated this thing in the past. So he has to decide whether or not he's going to save the world. And of course, if he doesn't save the world, they're going to kill him, because he wakes up in an era which is a lot worse than the era where he fell asleep, where it was cryogenically preserved. Is an era where if you're not useful to society, they basically let you die. So, if he doesn't solve the problem, you can't really stay alive. If somebody else has solved the problem, he can't stay alive.
Okay. All right, Cristina, thank you so much for being here. It's been a great discussion, and I hope people buy these books. Change Your Heart was great, and I look forward to reading Dissection.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And I'll send you the little trailer for the other book.
Yeah, please do so.
Thank you. And
For
please,
now,
also I request, please write a review on Amazon for me, or Goodreads on Amazon. I'm looking for reviews, most of all for Change of Heart. I don't have many enough.
oh, okay. I gave the 5 stars. I didn't write anything. I just got two wisdom teeth taken out, and I haven't really.
Well, that's okay, as long as you put the stars. If you write a review, is even better. But at least the stars is better than nothing, because there's a number of reviews, including just the stars.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good.
Anything you can do.
All right. Well, thank you, Cristina, for being here. I appreciate it and appreciate your work. But for now, this is the Rational Egoist signing out. I'm Michael Liebowitz. Till next time.